Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nedur dundu bayo divya Gandharva nandritur jagu Rishayas sharanasidhas Tushtavu purushottama. There was a beating of kettle drums in the heavenly planets. The inhabitants of Gandharva Loka began to dance and sing, while great sages and inhabitants of the Charana Loka and Siddha Loka offered prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottama. The best of the Gandharvas, King Hu, having been cursed by Devala Muni, had become a crocodile. Now, having been delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he assumed a very beautiful form as a Gandharva. Understanding by whose mercy this had happened, he immediately offered his respectful obeisances with his head and began chanting prayers just suitable for the transcendental Lord, the Supreme Eternal, who is worshipped by the choicest verses. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The story of how the Gandharva had become a crocodile will be described later. The curse by which the Gandharva took this position was actually a blessing, not a curse. One should not be displeased when a saintly person curses someone, for his curse indirectly is a blessing. The Gandharva had the mentality of an inhabitant of the celestial planetary system, and for him to become an associate of the Supreme Lord would have taken millions of long years. However, because he was cursed by Devala Rishi, he became a crocodile, and in only one life was fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face and be promoted to the spiritual world to become one of the Lord's associates. Similarly, Gajendra was also delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead when he was freed from the curse of Agastya Muni. We are reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 4, entitled Gajendra Returns to the Spiritual World. Text 2 through 4. What is being focused on here by Shukadev Goswami and our acharyas is how reversals, even of the most difficult kind, have the potential to be the greatest opportunities in our lives. The nature of material existence even when we come to the spiritual path, is we are conditioned that things should go our own way. Material existence is a consciousness by which I am the controller, I am the enjoyer, I am the proprietor, and therefore we very much are accustomed to expect things to go our way. And if they do not go our way, depending on our nature, we may become angry, vengeful, we may fight, or maybe we may give up, become depressed, commit suicide, withdraw from society. These are different ways, among the different ways that a conditioned soul deals with this emotional crisis that things are not going my way. Now, when we come to spiritual life, we still have our same conditionings. It's not that as soon as we come to the path of bhakti, we're pure. When you go to the hospital, it doesn't mean when you walk in the door you're free from disease. Usually after you walk in the hospital, there's more pain than before you walked in. Yes. I walked into a hospital last week. I was feeling quite good when I walked in. But soon I was on an operating table and they were cutting organs out of me and they were sewing me up, and soon I was laying there and they were asking me how many painkillers I want. A lot of pain, so many restrictions, so many problems. So when you go into a hospital as a patient, you can expect things are going to get worse before they get better, because that's the process of taking out the disease. Restrictions of diet, restrictions of movements, and then you're not even allowed out until they discharge you. Very difficult. So similarly, spiritual life is like coming into a hospital for the heart. And there's going to be a lot of difficulties that we wouldn't have to deal with if we just remained in the diseased condition without trying to help. So one of our conditionings, one of our diseases that we come into spiritual life with is that we expect things to go our way. And we also apply that to our spiritual life. I'm serving Krishna, so this is the way Krishna should deal with me. I've done this many pujas. I've done this so many sacrifices. He should make my children scholars. He should make them obedient to me. He should give me good health. In fact, he should give all my family members good health. And my business, of course, because it's for him, it should flourish, it should prosper without any impediments. And as far as my relationships, people should give me the honor and respect I am due for being such a sincere, saintly person. More or less, we all expect like this. But the problem is, if Krishna gave you what you wanted, you probably wouldn't grow much at all. Because bhakti is not about getting. Bhakti is about seeking shelter. You only get Krishna when you seek shelter. You only get Krishna when you give up hope of anything else. If you want other things, that is the karma kanda mentality. You can get other things. But you will not get the goal. So reversals come. And one of the problems is the reversals are not the ones we like. It is our tendency that I know reversals will come, and I know if I take shelter of Krishna in that situation, I'll make advancement. But the reversals, I'll give my list of which reversals are acceptable. But the problem is Krishna has his own list. He'll read your list. But usually whatever on your list won't work. Viparashantuta shashva tatra tatra jagat guru. Definitely the difficulties Kunti Devi got were not on her list. But she thanked Krishna because she understood it was perfect. What appears to be a curse is a blessing if we simply appreciate the inner essence of the possibility of how to connect to Krishna in that situation. Therefore, one of Prabhupada's most common and favorite of all verses was from 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Lord Brahma. Now, because this verse is spoken by Brahma, is very significant. Because if anyone in this whole creation of this universe would think that he's the controller and he'll get what he expects, it's Brahma. Yes? He's born from Vishnu himself on a lotus flower. There was no afterbirth, or he wasn't crying when he came out. Yes? It was a pleasurable birth. It was an ecstatic birth. Can you imagine in the hospital, all you ladies who've had children, all of a sudden a lotus flower just seamlessly comes out of you and a little baby just starts smiling and appears on that lotus flower. Mm-hmm. Painless for everybody. Very happy birth. And he was the only son at the time. And he's guaranteed a life of 311 trillion years. Nobody could interfere with that. We don't know if we have 5 minutes. So he has so much, and all the demigods are obeying him. But he's offering this verse. Because ultimately, Krishna completely humiliated Lord Brahma. Not the way Brahma wanted. Krishna again and again made Lord Brahma look like a total fool. At times, he absolutely humiliated Brahma in front of all of his children and disciples. And here in Vrindavan, he bewildered Brahma, where Brahma was practically paralyzed with confusion, although he's a big guru. And then Lord Brahma offers this verse. Tatenu kampam susamikshamano bunjana evat vikritam vipagam kridvapupur virvitatam namaste jiveti mukta pade sadayabak. One who seeks the compassion of the Lord with folded palms even in the face of the most difficult possible adversity. Seeking the compassion of the Lord. And bows down, thinking, I deserve much worse. But Krishna's just giving me this much, just to help me to turn to Him. And if we do this with a grateful heart, Dayabhak, that means it is our natural inheritance to go back home to the spiritual world, to attain the perfection of liberation. We have to see deeper than what appears. We were discussing this last night, that when you're watching a river, on the surface of the river are so many waves. These waves are constantly changing. Some are swirling, some are foaming, some are crashing against each other. And these waves, no wave lasts for more than a few seconds. It's the same water. But the same water turns into another form of a wave and another form of a wave, and the waves are always in a turbulent situation. But if you go deeper, there's a constant current below the waves that's steady and peaceful. Well, similarly in this world, the situations that come upon us, and even the different phases of our life, everything's just like the waves on the surface of our lifetime. Sometimes we're young and we're healthy. Sometimes we're old and diseased, and we lose our memory, and we lose all our power to speak. We lose our power to move. We lose our power to recognize anyone. Sometimes we have cancer. Sometimes we're winning athletic events. Sometimes people love us. Sometimes people hate us. It's all just the superficial surface of the waves, just moving around, always moving, due to the wind of time. But if we go deeper, we understand I am the eternal soul. I am part of God. And we make that connection between the soul and between our own consciousness and our soul. And we make the connection between the soul and God. That is constant. Nahanyate hanyamane sarire. For the soul, there's no birth, knows no death. And all of these superficial changes happening on the surface of this life have nothing to do with the soul. The current of truth. But very few people want to go deeper than the superficial appearance of existence. But what Krishna does to help us, He does it to materialists and He does it to devotees. He does it to everyone, because that's what the material world is supposed to do. Is on that superficial surface level of the waves, sometimes things are really flowing as you like, but other times so much disruption. The purpose of those disruptions is to break us from our complacency and not be satisfied on the surface. To give us a sense of real need to dive deeper, to connect to the constant current of truth. Here we find King Huhu. He's a beautiful king among the Gandharvas. Now, Gandharvas is a very exalted position within the higher realms. They have all the 8 mystic siddhis. They're really mystic yogis. They could practically do anything. They're expert at music and dance. They have wonderful bodily features, long lives, no disease. And he was the most prominent among them. Can you imagine having a life like that? It's very different than living in Mumbai. Mumbai, even if you have a beautiful home, still as soon as you go outside, you have to go through the traffic and people are knocking on your windows. And, yes? It's whatever pleasure is here is really superficial. But he's living in Gandharva Loka. And he's cursed by Devala Rishi to become a crocodile. Do you know how painful that must have been for him? From being a beautiful king in Gandharva Loka to become a crocodile? Crocodiles are not beautiful. The only person who appreciates a crocodile is another crocodile. And usually they fight. Crocodiles usually, what I've seen of crocodiles, because I've seen them in waters, they're usually alone. They're not very sociable, even with each other. They're usually swimming around alone, always looking for something to eat. Because the tongue is very powerful. The tongue wants to taste. You have that experience. And look at this, just compare the size of your tongue to that of a crocodile. So you can imagine how agitated a crocodile would. We have this little tiny tongue and it's just demanding so much from us. Crocodiles have huge tongues. And every little part of it is demanding food. So they're just hunting constantly. So here we find Sukadeva Goswami, a self-realized soul, is talking about what a great fortune it was for him to be a crocodile. Because although it was miserable for him for some time, in his complacency of being such a royal, successful controller, it would have taken him millions and millions and millions of years at least for him to ever see God. But because of this body of a crocodile, in one life he got to see God. Very special. Some suffering was there, but in one life he got to see God. And he got the perfection of life. Simply because he was connected to Gajendra, who was a very dear devotee of the Lord. You see, being a crocodile alone was not enough. But Gajendra, we will discuss his special qualities in a moment. Because he was associating with Gajendra, even in this most strange way, he got perfection of life. Now you may think that when Krishna came, the crocodile would just immediately just be in bliss. Oh, now Krishna's here. No, even after being a crocodile for all this time, when Krishna did come, he added insult to injury. He took a Sudarshan chakra and cut off his mouth. Yes? Crocodiles are very attached to their mouths. Everything. He took away, first he made him a crocodile, then as a crocodile he took away everything. And then at that point, Due to his association with Gajendra, who was offering beautiful prayers of love and devotion, King Hu surrendered. And he actually got relieved of all of his sinful reactions and attained. It says here he went back to the Gandharva Loka, but in the purports it explains he went to the spiritual world. That means internally, even though he went back to Gandharva Loka, he went back as a pure devotee, a Paramhamsa, who was in the spiritual world internally. He attained life's perfection. So really, was that a curse or a blessing? It was the greatest blessing. How does that translate to our own lives? Let us first examine Gajendra. Gajendra was Maharaj Indrajumna, who was living in Dravida Desh. He was a king. And he was so pious that after raising his family and performing these duties perfectly according to Dharma, he retired from family life and went to the Malaya hills to perform tapasya. How many kings are willing to do that? He grew matted hair, lived in the forest, in a mountain ashram, and absorbed himself in meditation and prayer. That's all he did. Fasting, performing austerities. And one day he was so absorbed in meditation, Agastya Muni happened to come. And Agastya Muni he's quite well known for liking to eat prasad. And hospitality is you offer someone prasad. That's hospitality of every culture in the world. You offer someone a sitting place, sweet words. We make them really feel that we want them there, and then we give them prasad. That's the universal principle of basic human culture. So Agastya Muni came, and Indrajumna Maharaj was just like this, sitting in meditation. So Agastya Muni cursed him. What was the king's fault? He didn't even know that the sage was there. Look, Parikshit Maharaj was cursed too, but he made a little mistake, which didn't warrant the curse to die. He just made a little mistake, being under illusion for a few seconds. But Indrajumna Maharaj didn't make any mistake. But he was cursed to become a dumb elephant. Now this is a setback. You've lived your whole life as a king. You only have a few more years to live. You want to perfect it, go back to Godhead. And this is a pretty big setback. Instead of finishing it all off and going back to Godhead, you get cursed by a sage to have a life of an elephant. And then the sage, after cursing him, left. But the most important part of this story, in one sense, is the next part. After the sage left, King Indrajumna, he was happy. He was satisfied because he knew in his heart that nothing happens by chance. If this is the route that the Supreme Personality of Godhead wants me to practice my devotional service, then it is perfect. He was grateful. Tatena kampam susamikshimano. King Indrajumna was thinking, actually, I deserve so much worse. But Krishna just gave me this little tiny bit. And it will help me, definitely. Because he had that gratitude toward Krishna, because he had that faith, Krishna was so pleased with him. that at that point it was arranged he was going to go back to Godhead. And Krishna orchestrated the whole thing by putting him in the jaws of that crocodile, knowing he would cry out for him with love and devotion at that time and show the whole world the highest example. This is really very much the crux of the story. King Intujumana Maharaj was not disturbed, but he was grateful for receiving this curse. Major setback in his own spiritual life, but he didn't see it as a setback. He saw it as an opportunity that was not the way he expected. It was not the way he planned it, but he understood the wisdom of the Lord, and it was perfect. So in our lives, reversals come. Materialistic people, reversals come. Devotees, reversals come. And they won't be what we want. Someone may get a disease. We have seen it. We have seen among our own devotees. Maharaj Huhu, it would have taken him millions of years to go back to Godhead. But because of this impediment, because of this reversal, one life. So similarly, devotees we have seen get terminal diseases. And of course you have the choice. When Krishna gives you mercy, still you have the choice to accept it, to tena kampam suksamikshamano, or to fight against it, or to blame Krishna for it. You can blame Krishna or you can thank Krishna. Either one is good. First class is thanking Krishna. Second class is blaming Krishna. Third class is deciding Krishna doesn't exist. Otherwise, if he existed, he would not do this to me. And sometimes people blame Krishna for a while, but then they thank Krishna after some time. They make some progress. But here we find that, some devotees, they get a disease, and then they really surrender to Krishna. Yesterday morning I met Stoka Krishna's daughter, and I was remembering him. It may have taken him a few lifetimes to go back to Godhead, but when he had cancer, he was smiling. At the beginning it was confusing, but after he accepted it and just really accepted it in his heart and Krishna's mercy and turned to him, within a few months he saw Krishna. So is that a curse or a blessing? You're going to die anyway in a few years, physically. But he transformed a curse into a blessing. And then relatives of somebody who dies. Very difficult. That person may have gone back to Godhead. What's the problem for them? Devotee, we see, devotee goes back to Godhead. They go through some crisis, they die, they go back to Godhead. We know they're being either going back to Godhead or being elevated very close in that direction because of their consciousness. That's something that we can visibly understand. So then for the relatives, why? Why did this happen to me? The father, the mother, the husband, the wife, the child has been blessed in a very, very special, special way. But it's painful. Not painful, it's painful for them while they're going through it, but then they're liberated. But it's painful for us after they're liberated. As long as we're just stuck on this superficial level of the waves, we're just seeing how the waves are moving. But if we go down deeper, we understand that we're going to lose everything eventually of this world. But if only we're just grateful to Krishna, and we turn to Krishna in our sorrow, turn to Krishna in our desperation. But one of the reasons it's hurt so much is it's not what we expected when we came to Krishna consciousness. This is hard. Because we're expecting chant and be happy. And it's true, you will be happy. But what type of happiness? Krishna doesn't want to give you happiness on just the wave happiness. You'll get some of that too. There'll be nice prasad, nice kirtans, sometimes nice friendships, a lot of happiness in the waves. But to go deeper, Krishna does something. He makes things happen that is not what we want and not what we expected. Sometimes devotees think, if I knew I had to go through this, I would have never joined this movement. That's why Krishna concealed these things from you at the beginning. You can't understand the 10th canto till you go through the first 9 cantos. So Krishna reveals what it takes to bring you back to Godhead when you're, after he gives you some of the happiness and bliss of being a devotee. But this is the cause of so much suffering and pain, and it's one of the greatest impediments to our spiritual progress, is this conditioning of expecting things to go our way, even in our spiritual life. Rupa Goswami says we should always be expecting Krishna's mercy. That we should expect. But his mercy is different than what goes on in our mind. Krishna said, sometimes when I give my first installment of my supreme mercy, I take everything away. So that we really understand the raw truth of material existence, and simultaneously understand that the mercy of God is always there if you go deeper down. Even world wars are just rippling waves on the surface of material existence. Even the dropping of nuclear bombs, they're just, little bigger waves. But none of them can disturb the truth if we just go a little down. Srila Prabhupada explains when he was in Calcutta and the Japanese were bombing the city, people were in panic, running helter-skelter in all directions. And Prabhupada was happy. He was sad to see people suffering. On the wave, on the surface part, he was very, very sad and compassionate for everybody suffering. But deeper down, he was thinking that Krishna has come in the form of these bombs. What does that mean? If I just remember him, It's instant. If I just remember him when the bomb comes, it's an instant ticket back home, back to Godhead. It's much easier than dealing with all family problems for the next 40 years and disappointments of your children and your wife and husband are not living up to your expectations and bills and too much heat and too much drought and too much rain and then old age and then disease. Life is difficult. But here it is. And you're a gopi. Making garlands with Radharani. It's a good bomb. If you're remembering Krishna, chanting his name, and the bomb comes, that's what happens. It's beautiful. But we can't appreciate that unless we go below the surface. Because all around us it looks like total ghastliness. Yes? But actually every single person there can go back to Godhead in a moment. So yes, the world is not going to be what we expect it to be. But those are the best times when things, the more they go against what we want, are the best opportunities for us to connect to Krishna. If we just make that choice. We shouldn't be stuck in our own routine of judging things in a certain way. By our own free will, we have to break out of that mold. And that's what all these stories of Srimad Bhagavatam are telling us. Almost every major story of the Srimad Bhagavatam is built on the foundation of major crisis. Why is it like that? Why isn't it just beautiful stories of peace and love and happiness and prosperity and everything going your way? Is there any story like that in the Bhagavatam? Is there any story like that in Ramayana or Mahabharata? Was Bhagavad Gita spoken in that setting? Why? Because it's the reality of what it takes. And not only in Hindu religion, but in every religion. Every religion. We find the very basis, the foundation, is reversals. The Old Testament. All the children of God, Abraham, they were slaves living in Egypt for generations, doing hard labor, getting whipped and beaten. They were literally slaves, generation after generation. And finally, after great, difficult efforts, they escaped from being slaves, and they all lived in the wilderness for 40 years. And everybody who escaped from slavery, they lived and died in the wilderness, and they were all supposed to go to the promised land, and none of them made it. They all died in the wilderness. And then when their descendants made it to the promised land, there was other people living there. And there was war after war after war. Peace and love. And that's the history. And Christians, Lord Jesus was a self-realized Jewish man who preached the basis of their religion, but he did it according to time, place, and circumstance, trying to find the essence and present that. And was he popular? He was tortured. He was crucified. He was persecuted. And then every single one of his followers were hunted down, persecuted, killed, tortured, or living like hiding. Very difficult. And Islam, so many wars, so many battles, escaping, so much persecution. The Parsis driven out of their own country and becoming refugees in a foreign land. Why? Why are not religions just really sweet storybooks? Now, if we read about Goloka Vrindavan, it's a really sweet book where everything's nice. But here, when Krishna descends to the world, there was a demon coming every day, even in Gokula Vrindavan. Yes? Putana comes, Trinavarta, Agasura, Keshi, Aristasura, Vatsasura, Pralambasura, Dhenukasura, Bakasura, blazing forest fires, Kaliya. And every time they came, it made the devotees more dependent on Krishna. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beginning cantos, Gajendra, Prahlad, Dhruva, Ambarish, the Pandavas, all based on the setting of crisis. And each of these great souls taught us how to turn to God in that situation with a grateful heart. But even more important, in each situation we find how God loves His devotees and is there for them when we really turn to Him. This story of Gajendra Moksha is one of the most important stories for our practical spiritual life. Because we are all in the crocodile of material existence. And the jaws of that crocodile are very strong. And we cannot escape on our own. However strong, intelligent, wealthy, powerful we are. No material arrangement brings real happiness. Maya's illusion feels if you become wealthy, you'll be happy. But historically, we see that the general tendency of people who become wealthy is they become isolated. And they hardly have any real friends. That's the truth about most people who become wealthy and famous. There are exceptions, but that is the tendency. Your whole life is so superficial. You really don't have real brothers and sisters. Everything's just based on superficial interactions, either for cheap enjoyment or just to get things done. But it's hard to have deep relations. The reason is because the more you're controlling, the more you become addicted and conditioned to this controlling spirit. You want to control everything and everyone. And you can't have a deep relationship as long as you feel you're controlling. So there's very little love for people who are extremely successful. It's always been that way. The only way they can be is if you really take a humble position. and really accept people as your equals. So here's the promise. People are fighting to get there, and then when they get there, they can't give up what they have, but at the same time, it's a very lonely and unsatisfying life. So Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to break through the misconception of this type of dream for happiness. That is why Srila Prabhupada was so strong when he spoke. There's really no happiness in the material world. All the so-called happiness is just on the level of these ever-changing waves and foaming bubbles. In the first canto, Prabhupada says that all of our happiness, all of our possessions, all of our relationships in this world are like foaming bubbles on the surface of the ocean of material existence, and all these bubbles at any moment will burst into oblivion. So are we going to be attached to the bubbles? Are we going to be attached to the depth of what's deeper in the ocean? Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu. Deeper down, there's an ocean of Krishna's mercy, Krishna's kindness, Krishna's love. That's where we want to dive deep. The entire ocean is Krishna's love. But we're attached to the foaming bubbles. Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago. Mahaprabhu says, wake up, sleeping souls. But usually waking up means to get us out of the sleep, and it's disruptive. Just like if you're having a really sound sleep and the alarm clock rings, what's your first reaction? You don't have to say it publicly. But first reaction is just, it's a disturbance, is it not? You're sleeping and you're dreaming that you're having a vacation with your lover on a tropical island. And all of a sudden, today there's so many alarm clocks. There's different bells. All of a sudden, and you just like turn it off. It's disruptive, but it woke you up. Yes? So the problems in this world are like alarm clocks. The reversals and difficulties. Because when things just keep going our way, we just stay in our dream. Yes, we stay asleep. Maybe a good dream, maybe a bad dream. But when reversals come, it's like an alarm clock to wake us up. But then we have a choice of actually waking up from that alarm clock, or now they have these snooze controls, right? Snooze control means, yeah, I know I should wake up and I should become serious about my spiritual life, but, later. I have it set. I'll do it after this and this is complete, then I'll do it. So some people just turn off the alarm clock and just go back to sleep. Some people do this snooze control thing, which means I'm going to turn it off, but I'm going to wake up. I'm going to become serious, like Kailash. Yes? Kailash and Narada Muni. He was always on snooze control. Yes, Gurudev, I know there's suffering. I know I should become serious about chanting the names of God and associating with saintly people, but I'll do it later. Just let me do this more, or let me sleep a little longer, then I'll do it. After all, last night I didn't get so much sleep, so just a little longer. But we wake up. Life is short. You should take advantage, take the opportunity now. And the tragedies that come upon us, transform them into blessings. That's wisdom. Wisdom is not memorizing slokas. Wisdom is applying the slokas to your life. And what does it mean? Here is a sloka, tate nukampam susamikshimano. Wisdom is when there are reversals which appear to be a curse, however painful, distasteful, and unacceptable it may appear, to transform it into a blessing by trying to just go deeper. Not deal with it on the level of the foaming bubbles and the waves, but to go deeper. And this Srimad Bhagavatam is taking us deeper. Gajendra was being totally humiliated publicly. He was the king. He was the unrivaled champion. And here he was in front of all of his friends and his children and his wives and his family members and everyone else being defeated helplessly. For a long time. He was about to die. It's very humiliating. Very painful. Extremely painful. Can you imagine having the jaws of a powerful celestial crocodile digging deeply into your leg? Very painful. And Gajendra was factually in pain. Don't try to make the story into something it's not. Don't think that Gajendra was in the crocodile, but because it's in Srimad Bhagavatam, the crocodile's teeth felt like, lotus flower petals due to love. Yes, just like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, when a lover bites his beloved, it feels very nice. But if somebody else bites you the same way, it hurts. Well, this crocodile was not his lover, so it really hurt. Hurt him excruciating. He was in absolute pain. He was humiliated. He was in pain, and it was going on for 1,000 celestial years. It wasn't just like, a mosquito bites you and it itches for 15 minutes and then it's gone. This was ever increasing. Pain was getting worse and worse and worse year after year after year after year. And he was about to lose his life. He was about to lose his family. He was about to lose his kingdom. He was in absolute mortal pain. Everything was going wrong. There was nothing he could do about it. He was totally helpless. That was the point when he remembered Krishna. Until that point, he was just thinking he's an elephant. He forgot he was Maharaja Indradyumna. It was at that point that he remembered his past life and remembered the prayers that he had learned. And he prayed to God from his heart. And it is explained, God came. Krishna came to him because he was his devotee. Because he accepted the curse of Angira Muni as a blessing, Krishna had to come to save him. But he put him in just the situation to perfect him. And here in the Bhagavatam it explains, even though he was in so much pain, when Krishna came to him, he didn't say to Krishna, Krishna, give me some anesthesia. He didn't say, Krishna, this is too much. I can't handle this pain anymore. Even at the peak of his suffering, he plucked a lotus flower and lovingly offered that lotus flower to Krishna. And the demigods and everybody are watching, thinking, just see a person in that painful situations offering a lotus flower to Krishna with love and devotion. Such a Vaishnava. In that situation, he just wanted to please Krishna. He didn't want to burden Krishna with his flower, with his problems. He just wanted to give his life to Krishna. He wanted to offer Krishna the best thing he had, this lotus flower. And in offering that lotus flower, he was offering his body, mind, words, and life to Krishna with gratitude, even in that painful condition. If you can do that, offer that lotus flower of your body, mind, words, and life, even in a painful condition, then you can see Krishna today. And on that very day, Krishna took his hand and pulled Gajendra out of the water. And just by touching him, Gajendra was completely free from all of his good and bad karma, everything. Then with the Sudarshan chakra, cut off the mouth of the crocodile. And then the crocodile, as soon as his mouth got cut off, which was pretty painful for him, after going through that difficulty, the crocodile becomes King Huhu, a beautiful personality. And he bows his head, grateful, and thinks the whole thing was a blessing. Devala Rishi, he was my best friend. He made me a crocodile. And as a crocodile, I was acting like a crocodile. But now, because of my association with Gajendra, and because you've come to save him, I get saved too. And he goes back to Godhead. And then the Lord, for Gajendra, he gives him not the body of King Indrajumna. The Lord gives him the body of a resident of Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. And then the Lord personally, on that very day, he personally escorts Gajendra back home, back to Godhead, to be his eternal associate in the spiritual world. So the curses of great souls always become blessings, because Krishna's in their heart and they are acting with compassion. But not only that, but the apparent curses, tribulations, reversals of this world are the greatest blessings. If we simply remember this principle, tatenu kampam susamikshimano, and turn to God. Mahajano yena gatasa padanta. The perfection of life is to follow in the footsteps of Mahajans. And analyze the lives of the Mahajans. They've all been through a lot. Bali Maharaj is a Mahajan. Can you imagine the tribulations he was put through? One day he's the king of the universe. The next day he's tied up with ropes and lost everything. And he surrendered. And Prahlad and Narada Muni, he was also cursed by Daksha. You're never allowed to stay in any one place. And how did Narada Muni respond to that? He didn't counter-curse Daksha. He said, good, I'll just travel around and preach. Every one of these Mahajans were put in very, very difficult situations. And they all taught by their example. So you may say, why does it have to be like this? How many are thinking like this? So we go to some other spiritual path where people just say, don't worry about any of this stuff, rules, regulations, talking about suffering. Just be happy and, do a little yoga. Be nice. That path, you can find a little happiness, but ultimately you're going to suffer as bad as anybody else. You're going to suffer as much as any devotee. But the difference is, you'll never get out of material existence. You'll never find God. It's a problem. If you want the real thing, we have to accept God's plan. And it's God's plan for everyone. It's just a matter of accepting it and responding accordingly. And Krishna makes himself so available. Just chant the holy names with sincerity, and you will go back to Godhead. You will attain the treasure of spiritual love and peace that is within your heart. But what it takes to get us to really chant the holy names in a spirit of taking shelter of Krishna with all humility. The world is designed to bring us to that point. And real spirituality, real Sanatana Dharma, teaches us how to respond to the world and gain the optimum spiritual benefits from our heart, like Gajendra, offering the lotus of our hearts through sincerely taking shelter of the Lord's holy name. Krishnananda Prabhu was waiting for this moment throughout the whole class. Is there any questions? Yes, Govinda Prabhu.
Maharaj, you mentioned about blaming. Blaming, Maharaj. We may not blame Krishna or Guru, but we may chant more rounds also. We may read more Shastra also. But we analyze and we blame our surrounding. Our equals, our juniors, our superiors. So we have that courtesy of not blaming Guru and Krishna, but we keep blaming others, analyzing with our fertile brain. So, is it beneficial in our Krishna consciousness?
It is absolutely not beneficial. At least if we blame Krishna, we're thinking of Krishna. But if you blame other people around you, then you forget Krishna too. And you're missing the whole point. It's just Maya's trick of cheating you of the opportunity. As long as we blame the surroundings and blame other people around us, then we totally miss the opportunity to advance and to grow and to get Krishna in that situation. Trinadapi sudicena taror ibasishana. Amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. To be humble like grass. That means I deserve to be stepped on. I'm grass. And tolerant like a tree means you don't blame anyone. You just keep giving and keep giving, whatever situation. To give all honor to others and expect not in return. This is the way we can chant with quality. Humility is not a weakness. Ignorant people think that to be humble means to be weak. Of course, material conception of humility, that may appear to be true, but that's not real humility. Real humility is to see that the power of God is within me and within everything. Real humility is to give up the ego that I'm the doer and thoroughly dive into the truth that Krishna is the doer, and to be an instrument of the highest power. Real humility is the greatest power in all of creation, because it connects us to the power of the absolute truth. But we cannot be connected as long as we have false ego. It's all around us. Humility tunes us in to the highest power. Ego tunes us into to these other frequencies. Which just complicate our lives. Does that answer your question? So this is why we remain in this material world, because we're always blaming other people and blaming other situations for our situation. And we never really seek a solution, which means turns to God. Gajendra did not blame the crocodile. And he didn't blame his family members and his friends for not being able to help him. He just understood this is an opportunity to turn to God. And he became perfect. He tried his best. We all have to try our best to deal with reversals. Is there any other question? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Maharaj, my question is that facing the reversal will give us the shelter of Krishna, but there is a fear to face the reversal. It's a very fearful situation when you are in that, when you're facing death. So, especially because right now we are in the bodily conception. So how do we gain more strength to face that fear?
They will come whether you like it or not. Even if you cut off your sika and start smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, having girlfriends, and going to the cinemas, it's still going to happen. Yes? You can't escape it. Material existence is what it is. But as devotees, we have to practice. Ragadvesha vimuktaishtu vishayanandrayashcharan atmavashaya vidheyatma prasaramarigaschati. By practicing the principles of bhakti, we access the mercy of the Lord, and we can overcome all these dualities. So just like in our base classes, some of you are having your Bhakti Shastra exams, yes? Is that the exams you have? So if you want to pass the exam, you know it's coming. You have to prepare. You have to come to the classes. And then you have to study and do your homework. And you have to do your memorizations. And then when the inevitable exam comes, you're prepared. For athletes, it's not that the champion cricket player just goes to the champion match and wins. Practically every day of the year, that person is practicing and doing exercises to be strong and practicing techniques and practicing together as a team. And then when they go to the champion match, they're actually prepared to win. Yes? So we know reversals are going to come. It's inevitable. It's the way the world is. Old age, disease, death, and so many things in between. So that's why we do our sadhana. Our sadhana is preparation, stabilizing, strengthening our consciousness, connecting with the absolute truth on a daily basis, accessing the power of the absolute truth through our chanting of the names. Kirtaniya Sadahari. We should be practicing to always be chanting the holy names. And we start by chanting our prescribed rounds every day. Nasta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavati sevaya. Regularly reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Sastra Koi. Shushu Shosh Tadanasya Vasudeva Katharuchi San Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tiratana Sevana. By associating with great souls and serving great souls, the taste for the holy names, the taste for the Bhagavatam awakens within our heart. So daily we chant, daily we hear, daily we do satsang, daily we chant, daily we serve. In this way we're developing spiritual strength. We're making the connection. And then when the inevitable difficulties do come, and they may come in the most unexpected ways, in the most unexpected times, we're ready. Doesn't mean it's not going to be painful. It means we're going to turn to God. And we're going to connect like we've never connected before. These are opportunities. But we have to be prepared to take these opportunities. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Maharaj.
One more question, and Prem Leela Devi.
Maharaj, you were given an example of Kunti Maharani and Indradumna, who became a Gajendra. I have a question is that sometimes you get into difficulties. You may accept it because, it is your karma. But then you see that if you don't correct that person at the right time, they may destroy themselves. So what do you do in that situation? Just accept it that is your karma, because you are in a whatever Krishna has put you in a position as working in a service or as a family member. So you just sit and watch and allow things to happen the way it is, or you try to correct the situation and try to help the person not to destroy themselves.
You should help the devotee. That is our service. Arjuna surrendered his heart to Krishna with all humility, but he still fought the war. because that was Krishna's will. It was Krishna's will to help others. That's part of what the reversals of material life are, is with the devotee. So many people, why did Prabhupada go out and risk his health, his life, his everything to give Krishna consciousness to others? Why didn't he just say, well, everyone's in Maya, so that's fine. Let me turn to Krishna. Turning to Krishna means to be an instrument of his compassion toward others, and that means you have to accept hardships and sometimes even sufferings to help others. In fact, that's considered to be the greatest of all types of devotional service. But it should not be done with ego. If we're actually trying to help a person based on proper guidelines, that's our service. But if we're reacting due to our own ego, for our own self-preservation, of course we have a right to defend our own self-preservation, but it should not be with ego. It should be with Krishna consciousness. The intelligence is whether what we do to try to help this person is going to work. Yes, that's where we need discrimination. Sometimes when a person was going off, Prabhupada would chastise them. Other times he would warn them. Other times he would just let them do what they were doing because he understood that that's the only way they're going to learn their lesson. Other times he encouraged them. Oh, you're doing this? Very nice. Just chant Hare Krishna. So because he really cared about people, he really searched his own heart and was empowered by Krishna to deal with it so that he could actually help in a very tangible way. And we should also be in that spirit. Does that answer your question? In this cannot refuse the opportunity of all the assembled devotees from hearing Ananda Vrindavan's dynamic, exciting, and often controversial question.
Maharaj, we could understand that to become a pure devotee, this Krishna is going to really churn us. It will be completely smashed from whatever we have that illusion in our life. But one doubt is always, right now is coming in my mind is, one person will struggle everything, from left to right, and he'll become a pure devotee. And once that person becomes a pure devotee, his 21 generation will get liberation. So the doubt comes that 21 generation people, they have not done anything. They have not struggled anything. They have not gone through all those ups and downs and tragedies and reversal in their life. Yet they got the benefit, a jackpot, they got it. So sometimes the doubt is coming in our mind. It's better to not to become a pure devotee and better to be a relative to somebody. The matter can be, the business will be achieved. We don't have to go through all these things. Because it is going to be a big struggle to get that pure devotional platform. So can you just tell us, Maharaj, that what about those people, those who have not struggled anything and got the pure devotion?
With your permission, I will speak my heart. You are in total illusion. Everyone struggles. All those 21 generations are going to go through the same miseries of material existence according to their own particular karmas. The difference is that one person accepted it as an opportunity to love Krishna. And because that one person accepted all those things that we all have to go through as an opportunity to love Krishna, he's delivering all the rest. But don't think the rest are just, surfing in Hawaii. Under perfect weather. And everybody's nice to them. And their bank accounts is ever increasing. It's not like that. Everyone in those 21 generations are suffering the same miseries of material existence according to their particular type of karma, and everyone is struggling. When you're driving down the streets of Bombay and you see people walking and they're all in the streets, do they look blissful? What do you say? Really, this city, people really look like they're struggling. They are struggling. But if one of their relatives becomes a lover of Krishna, they're going to get liberated. Yes. But it doesn't mean without struggling. And he's going to suffer. Everyone suffers in this world. Do you know anyone who's not suffering? Doesn't matter what situation you're in. There's happiness, but they're like those ripples on the surface. Sufferings come too. But for the soul to be without Krishna is suffering. The soul to be without pure love is a suffering condition. The person who surrenders to Krishna is actually the happiest. Because through all the difficulties, he's seeing meaning, or she's seeing meaning and fulfillment, and even through the difficulties is finding the internal treasure of real fulfillment and bliss by remembering Krishna. So that person, through the difficulties, is finding such deep relief, and such deep satisfaction, and such deep love. Yes? The other people, they're not tasting that. They're having a much more difficult time. What you're asking is this. If a whole family is in the ocean and they're all drowning and sharks are surrounding all of them, and they're all drinking salt water and gulping, ready to die. And there's a life raft. And one person takes the life raft. Yes? That one person takes the life raft. Who's suffering less? Which one? But who's suffering less if one takes the life raft? And then the person who takes the life raft comes out onto the ship, and then, because he's done that, Krishna takes a net and scoops up everyone else. That's how it works. Does that answer your question? It's not on.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, you mentioned in the class that as and when the tragedies or difficulty comes in our life, we have to go deep.
Very symbolic. He turned the microphone off himself and then he didn't know how to turn it on. But we'll get into that symbolism later. Go on.
So I wanted to know what is the consciousness the devotee should have it, so that we can get that consciousness of going deep and deep, so that we don't get affected with the outside world.
It is based on our sincerity. And that sincerity is nourished by associating with people who are striving to go deep and hearing about people who strive to go deep. We're hearing about Gajendra. We're in the association of devotees. We're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. We're hearing Bhagavad Gita. It's leading us into those deeper and deeper states of our consciousness, leading us into a deeper perception of reality. It comes through our association, our sincerity, and our own spiritual practices. And our prayer as well. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki